Here is a number I want you to sit with before I say anything else. 99%. That is the percentage of my total net worth that I accumulated after the age of 50. Not before 50, after. I am 94 years old today, and I started investing at 11. That means I spent nearly 40 years building a foundation, and then the real wealth came in the second half of the journey. I am telling you this not to brag, because the numbers are almost embarrassing at this point, but because I want you to understand something that nobody is saying clearly enough to people who are 60 and feeling behind. The game is not over, not even close. But the rules are different now, and if you keep playing by the old rules, you will make the one mistake that people in your position cannot afford to make. Today, I want to tell you exactly what that mistake is and exactly what to do instead. Most people who are 60 and struggling financially are not struggling because they were lazy. They are not struggling because they were stupid. They are struggling because life happened in the order that life tends to happen. Mortgages, children, medical bills, helping parents, career setbacks, divorces, market crashes at the wrong time. All the normal, unpredictable weight of a real human life. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, saving for the future kept getting pushed to later. Later when the kids are through school. Later when the house is paid off. Later when things settle down. But things never quite settle down, do they? And now it is later, and you are standing here with less than you hoped for, and more years behind you than ahead. And the question is, what do you actually do now? The first thing I need you to understand is that the strategy that works at 30 does not work the same way at 60. At 30, you have time as your most powerful weapon. You can take risks, recover from mistakes, and let compound interest do its slow, patient work over decades. At 60, you do not have that runway anymore. And this is where most people at your stage make the most dangerous mistake I see. They panic. They realize they are behind, and they start chasing. They put money into things they do not understand because someone promised a big return. They swing for the fences because they feel like they need to make up for lost time in a hurry. And what happens is they lose what little they have built. And now they are not just behind on the journey they were already on. They are starting over from a position even worse than before. I have watched this destroy people. A 62-year-old who loses half their savings cannot recover the same way a 32-year-old can. The math simply does not allow for it. So the first and most important rule at 60 is this: do not lose what you have. Protecting your foundation is more important right now than growing it aggressively. Now let me tell you what actually works at 60, because this is where I think people need practical truth instead of inspirational speeches. The most powerful financial move available to a 60-year-old is not finding the next great stock or the next real estate deal. It is looking honestly at what is leaving your life every month and stopping the bleeding. I call it plugging the drain. When you are young, you can afford to be a little sloppy with spending because you have decades of compounding ahead of you to make up for it. At 60, every dollar that leaves your hands unnecessarily is not just gone today. It is gone permanently. It will never compound for you. It will never produce income. It is simply gone. So the first practical exercise I want you to do is pull up your last 3 months of bank and credit card statements and go through every single line. Not the big, obvious expenses, the small ones, the subscriptions you forgot you had, the memberships you never use, the habits that became automatic years ago and have been quietly draining you ever since. You will be shocked what you find. Most people in their 60s are spending $300 to $500 a month on things they would happily eliminate if someone simply pointed them out. Now let me talk about what to actually do with money you can save or have saved, because the answer at 60 is simpler than most people want to believe. I have said for decades that for most ordinary investors, a low-cost index fund that tracks the broad stock market is the single best investment available. Not individual stocks, not complex products, not things that require special knowledge or inside information or perfect timing. Just a simple, diversified index fund, invested consistently, held patiently, and left alone. I told my own family that when I am gone, I want 90% of the money left for my wife put into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. Not because I cannot pick stocks, but because I understand that simplicity and consistency beat complexity and cleverness for almost everyone over the long run. At 60, you especially cannot afford complexity. Complexity creates confusion, and confusion creates mistakes, and mistakes at 60 cost more than you can recover from. Here is the piece of the puzzle that has the most impact for people in your specific situation, and it is the one I see ignored most often. Your single greatest financial asset right now is not an investment account. It is your ability to generate income for a few more years and put as much of it to work as possible before you fully stop. If you are 60 and you still have the ability to earn, even modestly, even part-time, that income flowing into a simple investment account for the next 10 years can genuinely change your retirement. Let me show you the math. If you can save and invest just $500 a month starting today at a reasonable 7% return, in 10 years, you will have accumulated over $86,000. That is not a fortune, but that is $86,000 generating income and growth for the rest of your life. If you can manage $1,000 a month, that becomes $170,000. And here is the thing that most people overlook when they run these numbers. You are not just building the account. Every year you delay drawing down that account, every year you can cover your expenses some other way, is a year your money compounds instead of shrinks. That is a real and meaningful number. I want to say something directly to the person watching this who feels ashamed. The person who has worked their whole life and feels like they have nothing to show for it. I understand that feeling better than you might think. I did not always have billions. I started with almost nothing. I made mistakes along the way that I still remember with clarity. I have known genuinely brilliant people who reached 60 with very little saved, not because they were foolish, but because life is complicated and the financial system is not set up to make this easy for ordinary people. So I am not here to judge you, but I am here to tell you something that I believe with every year of experience I have. The worst financial decision you can make right now is to let shame or discouragement make you passive, to decide it is too late to try, to stop paying attention to your money because looking at it hurts. That is the decision that turns a difficult situation into a hopeless one. Every other problem I have described today has a solution. Passivity does not. There is an old saying that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. I have always found that phrase a little too tidy for real life, but the underlying truth is sound. You cannot go back and plant the tree 20 years ago. That is not available to you. But you can plant it today, right now, with whatever you have, in whatever soil you are standing in. And a tree planted today at 60 still has 20 or 30 years to grow if you take care of it. That is not nothing. That is, for many people, the difference between a retirement defined by constant financial anxiety and one defined by quiet, modest, genuine security. You do not need to become wealthy. You need to become stable. And stability at 60 is absolutely still within reach if you make the right decisions starting today. So here is what I want you to do the moment this ends. 3 things. First, plug the drain. Find the money leaving your life that does not need to leave and stop it this week, not eventually, this week. Second, if you have money sitting in cash or low return accounts out of fear, have a conversation with yourself about whether fear is the right strategy or whether a simple index fund might serve you better over the next decade. And third, if you can extend your earning years even slightly, even by 1 or 2 years of part-time work, take that seriously. The math rewards it more than you think. I do not want this to be the video you watched at 60 that made you feel better for 20 minutes and then changed nothing. I want it to be the day something actually shifted. The game is not over, but the clock is running. And if there is one thing I have learned at 94 years old, it is that the people who act, even imperfectly, always end up in a better place than the people who wait for perfect conditions that never arrive. That is all.